Welcome back, history lovers. I'm Hari, and today we are traveling back in time to the year 1826 to a place called York. Now, if that doesn't sound familiar, it's because today we know it as Toronto, Ontario, and boy, did York have some serious drama going on back then.
Thanks, Hari. Yes, I'm Kimmy, and today's tale is all about the Types Riot. It sounds like a modern typographical error or a protest by graphic designers, but it was actually a highly coordinated, elite-sponsored act of property destruction on June 8, 1826. We are talking about the destruction of a printing press belonging to a very vocal reformer named William Lyon Mackenzie.
Mackenzie was definitely a thorn in the side of the establishment. The establishment in question was a group called the Family Compact. They were the ruling elite of Upper Canada, mostly descendants of Loyalist families who arrived after the American Revolution. After the War of 1812, they basically appointed themselves to every powerful position in government, the judiciary, the church, and financial institutions, using that influence to enrich themselves and their relatives. They were also known as Tories.
Right, and opposing them were the reformers. Mackenzie launched a newspaper called The Colonial Advocate in 1824 to challenge this ruling class. But he didn't just write dry political policy pieces. Under the pen name Patrick Swift, Mackenzie published some incredibly spicy editorials. For the paper's second anniversary in May 1826, he went full tabloid. He published highly offensive stories about the ancestors of the Family Compact, accusing their female relatives of having multiple sexual partners and being infected with syphilis, while also insulting their physical appearances.
Talk about hitting below the belt. And then, on the very day of the riot, June 8th, he published an account of an 1817 duel where Samuel Jarvis, a Tory government official, killed John Ridout, the son of a prominent reformer. Jarvis took this as a deeply personal attack, so the stage was set for some major retaliation.
And retaliate they did. That evening, around 6 p.m., a mob of 9 to 15 young men armed with clubs and sticks marched single file toward Mackenzie's printing office on the corner of Palace and Frederick Streets. Mackenzie himself was actually out of town in Queenston. The mob was looking for his foreman, Ferguson, whom they believed wrote the Patrick Swift articles. But when they forced their way in, Ferguson wasn't there.
So, instead, they decided to completely destroy the place. They terrorized Mackenzie's family, including his mother, wife, and kids who lived on the property. They scattered metal printing type all over the floor, smashed the heavy wooden press, and then carried cases of the metal type down to the nearby bay and threw them right into the water. Hence the name Types Riot.
But here is one of the most shocking parts of the story, Hari. While this was happening, bystanders and neighbors wanted to intervene. Mackenzie's apprentices were screaming for help. But everyone stood down because two high-ranking government administrators and police magistrates, William Allen and Stephen Heward, were just standing there, watching the whole thing. In fact, Heward was actively shouting encouragement to his own sons, who were part of the rioting mob.
It's absolutely wild to think about police magistrates cheering on a riot. Of course, this led the public to believe the Upper Canadian government fully sanctioned the attack. The editor of another independent newspaper, Francis Collins, publicly denounced the magistrates for their inaction, while others called it a direct assault on the freedom of the press. Meanwhile, Mackenzie, who was already struggling financially and physically from malaria, went into hiding because he feared for his life.
He didn't stay down for long, though. Mackenzie decided to fight back using the legal system. He knew the Attorney General, John Robinson, was biased and wouldn't prosecute the rioters criminally, so Mackenzie launched a civil lawsuit for damages. He sued the rioters, including Samuel Jarvis, who later proudly claimed he organized the whole event to preserve the colony's power structure.
The trial was a massive media sensation. The defendants admitted they did it, so the jury only had to decide how much money to award Mackenzie. Now, here is a bizarre, lesser-known fact from the jury deliberations. The jury was stuck debating the amount for 30 hours. 3 jurors actually fell ill. One juror, a German immigrant named Jacob Boyer, was so sick that he had bloodletting administered to him right there. But he absolutely refused to leave the jury. Talk about dedication to the civic duty.
Bloodletting during deliberations, that is incredibly hardcore. Eventually, the jury came back with a verdict, awarding Mackenzie £625. To put that in perspective, that was a massive, punishing sum of money for the time. It completely saved Mackenzie from bankruptcy, allowed him to buy brand new, state-of-the-art printing equipment and keep his newspaper running. He even used the leftover funds to launch his first successful political campaign for the legislature.
So, the family compact's plan completely backfired. Instead of silencing him, they funded his career and turned him into a political martyr. The Tory elite was so embarrassed by the civil verdict that they later orchestrated a rapid criminal trial to try and force Mackenzie to admit he exaggerated the damages. But the jury quickly found the rioters guilty anyway, and the judge, noting they had already paid the massive civil settlement, fined them just 5 shillings each.
Historically, this riot is seen as a turning point. It exposed the deep divide in York's youth between the upper-class elites and the working-class reformers. Historian Carol Wilton even suggested that the riot and its aftermath serve as the focal point of what is considered the most important debate in Upper Canadian legal history. It showed that the family compact was willing to bypass the rule of law to keep their power, which ultimately convinced many reformers that peaceful change was impossible, paving the way for the Upper Canada Rebellion of 1837.
It is amazing how a pile of metal letters thrown into a bay could trigger a literal rebellion. Well, that brings us to the end of our episode today. We hope you enjoyed diving into this fascinating slice of Canadian history with us. Until next time, stay curious.
This episode is based on the Wikipedia article Types Riot, which is available under the Creative Commons Attribution Share-alike license. This podcast was crafted using artificial intelligence.